Hello, my name is Benjamin Hart. I'm an American attorney and the managing director of Integrity Legal here in Bangkok, Thailand. As the title of this video suggests, we're discussing cannabis here in Thailand. I thought of making this video after reading a recent article from the Bangkok Post, bangkokpost.com. Article is titled, Cannabis Restricted to 5 Medical Uses, Health Authorities Say. First thing I would say on that is, based on what law? I've talked about this repeatedly. There's no underlying law that says that they can do this. And frankly, this is as arbitrary and capricious as going to florists and saying, hey, you can't sell these flowers because we say so. And we're the Ministry of Public Health. There's not an underlying law that says cannabis is anything other than just some plant. Okay, I've discussed this at length in other videos. The doctrine of codification is one of the fundamental principles of a civil law country, and it's just kind of being flouted because, you know, this ministry says so. Meanwhile, we're not even under a government now. We're under a caretaker government because the cabinet's been vacated and the prime minister was adjudicated to have been acting unethically and was removed from office by the Constitutional Court. So under what authority are they making these rules? I have really issues with this because it's just, you know, oh, we don't like cannabis, so therefore we're just going to say whatever we want. You have to go along with it. It's arbitrary and capricious to say the least. Quoting directly, cannabis buds may legally be used. Who says legally? As I'll get into in another citation, quoting further, be used only by patients with 5 categories of symptoms and must be obtained with a doctor's prescription, the Department of Thai Traditional and Alternative Medicine announced on Monday. Again, based on what law that says that cannabis can be regulated in this way? You know, you came up with the regulations before that basically just said you got to be over 20, no selling to pregnant women, you know, which was baseline. I mean, where is all this coming from? These regulations are apropos of what promulgated law through Parliament that they said they would promulgate some 18 months ago that nobody's ever gotten around to, but now we're just doing this stuff because we say so. Quoting further, Director General Dr. Somluk Jungsmam said the permitted conditions are insomnia, chronic pain, migraine, Parkinson's disease, and anorexia. Patients must present prescriptions from licensed doctors or pharmacists, and cannabis buds can be sold only in licensed shops. Well, you always had to have a license, which, by the way, the roughly 20,000 people who went out and got licenses to sell, they're supposed to now forever be dictated to in an arbitrary and capricious manner based on no passage of any underlying law. That said, and I mean, on top of all of this, so what? What gives them the right to say that, oh, you can only have it under these conditions? You know, you have to have a license to sell alcohol in Thailand. Where's anybody saying, oh, well, you need a doctor to say that you can have 2 beers a day because your foot hurt or something? You know, I mean, again, this is arbitrary and capricious to say the least. That said, quoting from a different citation, patiamail.com, article is titled, Government Describes the Latest Rules to Rein in Green Rush Cannabis. Again, rules. I put rules in quotes in the title because it's like rules based on what? Based on what authority? What law was passed in Parliament that says that previously licensed cannabis shops, licensed under the terms they were licensed under, can be regulated in this way? Quoting directly, cannabis was decriminalized in Thailand in 2022. No, it was not. It was legalized. I know people don't like the procedure it was legalized under, but I didn't like living under the COVID emergency decree either. It just so happens that Mr. Anutin utilized that same emergency decree to use his powers to pull cannabis off the narcotics list. The emergency decree ended, and it requires an act of Parliament to change it back. And nobody likes it, but it is what it is. And it wasn't decriminalized. That's a non-word. Decriminalized is cops not doing their job, which is enforcing the law. It was legalized. Quoting directly, cannabis was decriminalized in Thailand in 2022, but there was no legislative follow-up. Yeah, meaning nothing changed, legally speaking, which has resulted in confusion ever since. No, there's no confusion. There's a movement by certain, I would argue some in some cases, foreign interests, but big interests that don't like cannabis being legal. I can think of 2 off the top of my head, big alcohol, big pharma, that don't like it. They just don't like it. It's cutting into their profits, I imagine. But, you know, you want to do something about it, pass a law. That's the way this system works. We got to take all kinds of criticism from foreigners all the time about how Thailand doesn't do this right or do that right. Well, here we are doing it actually right, where this is legal, and if you want to change it, you can pass a law, and yet these foreign interests are like, oh no, just do whatever you want. Do it on, some arbitrary and capricious just because I say so nonsense. It's pretty ridiculous. Quoting further, a long-promised parliamentary act is still awaited. Yeah, they haven't passed an act through Parliament. So in a civil law system, it is inherent upon the government to affirmatively make a law. Barring that, the people are free to do as they want. That's how civil law maintains freedom in constitutional systems, be they, of any ilk. That's how it works. Quoting further, so it is currently not an offense to be in possession of cannabis, which remains a controlled herb and absolutely not an illegal narcotic. Yeah, this was written by Barry Kenyon. Tip of the hat to you, sir. Yeah, good pointing that out. It is not a legal narcotic. You need to pass a law to make it so. And frankly, all of this is nonsense without legislation. Quoting further, whether existing retail cannabis outlets will now implement the new system or close down or carry on regardless will likely depend on local police forces up and down the country. Well, why? What are they enforcing? If they're enforcing the law, I'm all for it from the police. But if it's just some arbitrary and capricious rule by some, at this point, coming from a ministry that's in a caretaker capacity that isn't really the government anyway, in any permanent sense, what would that enforcement be based on? This needs to stop. And frankly, the press coverage of this in certain ways needs to stop as well. I think Barry Kenyon, I urge those who are watching this video, go check out patiamail.com to read that article in detail. I think he does a good job of covering it. But a lot of the mainstream press is talking about this like there's been some promulgated law and this is business as usual in terms of law enforcement. It's not. Cannabis was legalized. People went out and got licenses and built businesses and detrimentally relied on government action to undertake making a living for themselves. And they've been just thrown under the bus and treated arbitrarily, capriciously, and frankly, really badly if you look at it from the standpoint that this could all be based on the impetus of foreign interests or big interests designed to destroy little shop owners. Really, this needs to stop. Hopefully it will. We'll certainly be keeping you updated on this channel as the situation evolves.